Okay, how about that? Is that good now? Here we are. MPW Digital Postgame Show. Sorry about that. We had a little bit of technical glitch. Picked a really bad day for that, didn't we? Picked a really bad day for that to happen, but that's okay. Just give me a second. We'll get going here. I know no sound. It's fixed now. I promise. We have it. I'm staring at it. We're all good. Okay, it's okay. We're good now. So again, as I said, Ole Miss 22, Kentucky 19. Huge win for the Rebels, 5-0. I know you guys probably were having 8 different levels of cardiac arrest there toward the end. We'll talk about that. We'll get Jeffrey on the line here in a minute as well. Give me 1 second to kind of get the links out. You can talk amongst yourselves, talk to me, whatever you want to do. But we'll get it done. I need to brighten everything up a little bit too. It's a bit of a chore. Yeah, I hit some wrong buttons. I don't know what I was doing on this thing today, but I was hitting some wrong buttons and it got a lot of stuff screwed up. So give me a second. We'll get the show going. Just got to get one quick thing done real quick, and we'll get going with. We'll call Jeffrey first. A second. I've even got to get my own chat box up. We're just all off for a second. I was rushing a little bit to get to you guys because I knew we wanted to get going. Big day for Ole Miss, so I wanted to get the show going, but it caused me to be a little behind as far as being completely ready. So just give me a second. It's fine. You guys aren't going anywhere. You got plenty of time. You're in a good mood, so there's no problems here at all. Appreciate everybody with the super chats. Means a lot as always. Thank you for that. Play calling was a little blah. We'll get into that. We're getting a lot of stuff. We're just gonna hang out for a while. What games are we watching? Are we watching? Are we doing state? Alabama, Arkansas. Well, I guess it's state Arkansas. I mean, Alabama, Arkansas right now, isn't it? Yeah, Kentucky's kicker. That was not ideal. All right, one more second. And the stream, somebody saying Barry and Brown is a monster. Yeah, it was really easy to figure out why Ole Miss was so obsessed and wanting Barry and Brown so much, wasn't it? I mean, that was not a complicated thing at all to figure out. Let's see. I just need to get the link up on the board. Give me a second. Again, I should have done this all before we started, but I wanted to make sure I got to you guys. I was sort of in scramble mode a little bit, so it's okay. Just kind of hanging out. We're all over the place, but it's okay. The score was 22-19, right? Yeah. Okay. I know it sounds crazy, but sometimes you forget that in the middle of everything else. My picks have been just brutal this year, but I got really close to getting this one right. I mean, we're talking, I think I had 23-20, maybe, Ole Miss. I think I had 23-20, something like that. Wilson, congrats on the book. Appreciate that as always. Appreciate you. Okay, so a lot of stuff here. We're getting Jeffrey in a couple minutes. I think I got everything set up. We're good. No, I need to tweet it. Sorry. One more thing. I'm all over the place. It's okay. Talk about the last few minutes though, changing the tenor of you guys. I figure you're all in a good mood. Everything's gonna be fine. You're plenty patient. Had Ole Miss lost this game and then this would have been going on right now, I don't think you guys would be quite as patient with me. But at the moment, it's gonna be all right. A lot of social media stuff going on with the Rebels in a good way. A couple of quick thoughts. What we call Jeffrey. I know, pull it together. I'm getting there. Okay, it's just one of those days. It is what it is. It's fine. Um, Ole Miss. I wrote this in observations a second ago. Ole Miss beat Kentucky at its own game. It dominated from a yard standpoint. Kentucky only had, and a lot of sacks flowed into this, but Kentucky only had 108 yards um, rushing. Levis was fine. Levis is kind of what I thought. He made some big time throws over the middle. I get the arm strength. He also still held the ball a little too much. He did some stuff I didn't like. I mean, it's one of those it was an interesting situation. Kentucky standpoint, it was kind of exactly what I thought it would, what they would look like. But Ole Miss muddied it up. Um, Ole Miss ran the ball effectively. There in the fourth, I thought they got away from some of the things that it worked. It got a little funky, and Ole Miss's ability, and not necessarily blaming Eli Acker because it's not even his primary position. So he's doing the best he can. It is what it is. It's not optimal with Caleb Warren out or at least banged up for the little that he played, but the snaps were so bad at times that it was messing up not necessarily even just the actual play because it was off or down or over or whatever. But Ole Miss runs so many of those kind of motion timing plays off the snap that you were just waiting on a potential fumble or that thing to hit the guy or it messed things up or occasionally Dart had to just hold the ball and run with it. Dart was having to operate a lot of extra things that don't necessarily think that you would think he would be operating at the time. So I thought he played okay for the most part. But this is about defense. Defensively, they were really really good today. They were flying around. I thought that Davison and DeAndre both played great at the corner position. I thought they handled Kentucky's physical wide receivers when Levis did start trying to take shots. They did a good job with that. Both teams probably getting bailed out a little there at the end. That was definitely a face mask on Judkins that should have ended the game. And then from a pure rule standpoint, that was targeting on Levis as well. So, those things kind of offset. You can't talk about one without the other, and you can't sit there and talk about, well, it's targeting. Yeah, and it was a face mask that shouldn't end this thing. So, Ole Miss wins 22-19. Again, 13 in a row now at home. Vanderbilt next week, Auburn. A lot of opportunities coming for the Rebels. So let's get Jeffrey on. Let's talk about it. Yeah, look, Lane Kiffin is a I guess SEO monster from a Google, from a search engine standpoint. So they are going to do anything, any site, including Fox News, if there's anything that makes it where he's going to bring clicks to them. That is the situation there with that. I'm not surprised at all that any outlet tweeted about Lane and the thing with Trigg there early in the game.
Can you hear me?
I can. How are you?
Well, I wish who was the kid that picked up the fumble?
I'm not even sure. I was doing so many different things. I don't even know who recovered it. You wanted him to
Yeah,
take off and run with it. Is that what we're going at?
yeah. Well, listen, make a play. How many more times are you going to get that opportunity? Make a play, son.
Eddie O and Ole Miss lost the game in Baton Rouge because the kid tried to scoop and still score instead of just falling on the football.
Yeah, I think it was that weird 17. That was like that overtime game, right?
It was, yeah.
I think it was like on pay-per-view. I was at the All-American Rejects or starting line open for the All-American Rejects at the Mid-South Coliseum, and I was trying to get updates on my Sprint flip phone. I remember that one vividly.
Yeah. So we'll talk about this one. Ole Miss surviving 22-19. Kentucky, Barry Brown's a beast. He really kind of kept Kentucky in the game the entire time. I understand why his recruitment was what it was when he came out of Nashville and out of the high school. But Jeffrey, I wrote at the top of observations. Ole Miss won a game that probably fit Kentucky a little bit better from a tempo standpoint. It's what Ole Miss has become as well. They really just bloodied this thing up. They way outgained them in total yards despite not having the ball very long. Defensively, they flew around. They limited the big plays except for Brown. I thought that this is not a game where deserve is anything to it, but I thought Ole Miss was just a better team today.
I think what it's fair to say is Ole Miss did more things to win the football game than Kentucky did. Sure. Sometimes it's little things like it's executing, PAT snaps. It's, Jackson had the one interception, but this is kind of the thing that I felt today. The numbers didn't maybe suggest it. I thought Jackson outplayed Levis. And I don't love the things that they asked Levis to do, but I thought today was very encouraging for Jackson Dart because I think he's starting to get better and he's starting to get more comfortable.
It's hard to emphasize. I mentioned it for a second in my opening while I was trying to get all the links out. Is not to pick on Eli Acker, but the snaps being as bad as they were today, the extra muddying that Jackson had to do. He's having to look downfield, get the ball. It's rolling on the ground. He's trying to match up on some of these timing plays with the snaps. I mean, there were a lot of extra things on him that, considering that and considering not just the snaps were bad, but not knowing where the snap was going to be and having to think about that pre-snap when it's coming, he played really well with some extra stuff that typically you wouldn't have in front of you.
Oh, I completely agree. Like, even think about, some of those snaps, like even the ones that were like getting back to him, they were kind of like flutter balls. When you hit the old big right, or for you, the big left wifey fade off the tee, it's just that spinny little flutter ball that goes nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it felt like even when it was getting back to him, those were the types of snaps he was getting. And for Ole Miss, it just throws off everything because so much is a read and timing play. And I left very, very impressed with him. Yes, he made the one poor throw at the end of the half. It really was a poor decision, not really a poor throw. But other than that, man, I thought he played some big boy football because, like, he took some big shots. He made some big throws, and I just left thinking, if they can stick with this guy, I think this guy can end up being a good football player.
His mistakes were a young football player mistakes, and it's the thing that he's still having to clean up. It's the balls across the middle where he's not looking off, or he's focused on one guy, and people are just kind of stepping in front of the ball because he got a little fortunate in the first half. There wasn't another pick or two, but we can't completely dismiss how good some of his throws to the edges were, especially off his back foot. I mean, people probably wouldn't want you to throw off your back foot like that, but he was getting pressure. He threw it where only receivers could make it. And I was going to ask you in a second anyway about the wind and the way that both offenses were having to operate through it. He managed the game really well. That other than that one area where he's constantly making mistakes, he's done a really nice job protecting the football this season. And today was kind of that. He put his guys in a lot of different places to win. He sort of played point guard in the right way today.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Like, another play that stood out to me was it was a first down throw, and again, I'm watching the TV camera, so I couldn't tell. But to me, it looked like Heath had outside leverage, and Heath was kind of like trying to run like a skinny post or more of a post, and he threw the ball on a go route, and that was going to be, if not a touchdown, it was going to be a massive, massive play. And, you could tell, like, he was looking at Heath afterwards. He's like, hey, man, like, I was thinking go up. But, really just what it boiled down to me today was I thought Ole Miss played cleaner. It was not a perfect football game. But Ole Miss, I thought, made more plays to win the football game than I thought Kentucky did.
Overall,
I mean, think about this, man. I'm not bagging on him, but, like, Levis snapping the football before his guy's even set when he has a one-on-one with a 6'4" receiver on a corner. Like, Ole Miss didn't make that mistake today. I thought that was the difference in the game for me.
Yeah, look, Levis is a tough kid. He's a big kid. He's a physical kid. He played through the finger and all that kind of stuff. He did not have Jackson Dart's level of composure. I mean, he's got all the physical tools in the world, but I thought just sort of managing his team, he didn't do a great job today. I thought the play calling was weird. They got in a lot of Kentucky, that saying, got into a deal where they had 3rd and 2. They had these short distance things. They got away from Rodriguez. They got cute at times. Thought Levis made some weird decisions. I just thought, I see the potential, but we talk about this all the time in every sport and so many different players. And I think you and you talked about this with Neil and myself on Thursday so much. He's just so far from some finished college product or the best player and that kind of stuff. He's still making a lot of mistakes that, I mean, would get you eaten alive at the next level.
Yeah, to me, he is a byproduct of Josh Allen. And I think Josh Allen is going to ruin quarterback scouting for like a decade, because people now are going to go out and look for these physically special, like big arm guys, because they're convinced they can turn him into Josh Allen, when in reality Josh Allen he is an outlier. He is an exception. Like, he came from a small school in Fresno that, no one really watched, and then he's never really been coached all that well. Like, Will Levis was a known entity. Like, and I don't want to turn the whole show into bagging on him, but like, I don't know. I do not see it, man. Like, he's got a big arm, but at a certain point, man, you gotta throw it to where you're trying to throw it.
What did you like about the Ole Miss defense today, and kind of what they did against that Kentucky offense?
Effort. I mean, I think one of the more unsung plays is the fact that they ran down. I know he had the angle, but how big is it now that he didn't score on the big chunk play with a minute left? Mm-hmm. I mean, to me, like, you know what I mean? Like, keep playing, because then you get the false start. You give up the touchdown, but it's a false or the illegal motion, and just keep playing. And I thought it was a big move to go to the 4 down lineman after the right tackle had the cramp, to go to the 4 down lineman to get some extra pressure. And you see, like, Levis kind of holds the ball a half second too long, and you make a play. Like, to me, like, that was what was impressive about them. We see why Rodriguez is a good back. He's tough to tackle. I thought at times Ole Miss's tackling was bad, but I'd also like to give some credit to, the guy that's probably going to carry the ball in the NFL for a long time. But I thought Ole Miss's ability to just kind of hang in there and not give up they made it difficult on Kentucky. And to your point, that game script went entirely Kentucky's way. I mean, what was the time of possession breakdown in the second half? Let's see.
Yeah, it was 37-23 total. I don't know what the second half was.
But I think the second half had to be big time. Let's see. All right, second half. 18-11 in the second half. I mean,
wow, okay.
I guess it was about the same both halves, but I don't know. It just felt like Ole Miss never really had the ball with a chance to do very much in the second half, and that defense was on the field for a lot of plays, and hats off to them, man, because there were several times I think that they could have ended up getting burned, and they didn't.
Offensively for Ole Miss, especially in the second half, I mean, some of that was when Jackson doesn't throw through it as well as maybe Levis did. They struggled during the third quarter in that instance. They got away from the run game a little at times, but in general, what did you sort of think of the play calling, the play of the offense in the second half when it did kind of bog down?
I thought the biggest difference between the first half and the second half was Ole Miss was getting behind the chains in the second half. You could tell they tried to switch centers, and while the snap was better, he just wasn't healthy enough to get his blocks, and so that drive never really got off to anything. Like, that was a 3 and out. Then they start another drive with a 1st and 15. To me, the biggest difference between the first half and the second half was they didn't get the drive started as cleanly as they did in the first half.
It's Quinshon Judkins' third 100-yard game in 5 games. He also had a 98-yarder. It's safe to say that Deuce's record of 14 100-yard games is in severe jeopardy right now.
I mean, I feel like the only way that record stands is if he's not an Ole Miss Rebel for 3 years.
Yeah, if he is healthy and in red and blue for 3 years, it's hard to see him not get to 14.
Yeah, I that guy is a special football player. I don't know what his top end speed is, but it's good enough. And man, do I love the way his vision and the way he sets up things like 1 cut and go. He's that guy could play for me.
They're obviously both good, but it seems like Lane and Weiss, or however you want to phrase that, it seems like they almost trust him more than Evans right now because he's protecting the ball better.
Well, I think it's also that he's better in the inside running game,
Mm-hmm.
and for them, like if you look at where their kind of explosive runs came from today, it was mainly the inside running game. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, Evans Evans to me did not look 100%. Obviously, you keep up with it on a daily basis more than I do, but he did not look to me like he did week one.
Anything new from wide receivers today? I thought Heath was pretty good, frankly.
I thought Heath was really good. You can tell they're keying on Mingo and taking him away, and it's frustrating a little bit. But I mean, to me, it's going to be a situation where their passing game's just going to have to come along because you can tell. Like I think it's noteworthy when you have Blackledge drop the note that Jackson's never played in an RPO offense, and if you've never played in it, it does simplify the game a little bit, but it is something you have to get experience with and get reps with. And if it's like it's almost like a foreign offense if you're not used to it. And so I do think like that's part of it with Jackson. Like I think they need to just stick with him and be patient because I do think I see the makings of a really good player.
They bracketed. They kind of kept Mingo out, which I guess you stop that. But I was a little surprised they focused on him that much instead of playing a little more run defense, a little more straight up. Putting the emphasis on Jonathan, I thought was an interesting move from Kentucky as a defense.
Yeah, they didn't take away the run like I thought they were going to do. You could tell their goal was still trying to not give up the explosive pass plays. And that surprised me a little bit. But, I mean, you can't really – I don't think you can gripe too much with Kentucky's game plan. I mean, don't you think if you would have told them you're going to hold Ole Miss to 22, don't you think they would have felt pretty good about where they were?
This is Ole Miss playing better defense, running the ball. It's giving Dart a chance to come along at his own pace a little bit. But I'll tell you also, because it was just said in the stream, this is a game that typically Ole Miss had lost or in the past and been one of those heartbreak things you talked about. And it's taken not really that long considering the streak Ole Miss is on now. It's 16-3 in their last 19. He fully has the Rebels expecting to win football games. Like you said, it's the effort down there at the end where they don't let the guy score on the long play. It's just kind of playing to the whistle. It's winning so many close games over the course of last year with Tennessee and Arkansas and now this. It's a complete transformation where Ole Miss at this moment is just an upper tier SEC team that expects to win when they take the field. And look, that's a mindset that does go win football games. You play somebody who doesn't have that mindset, and you're going to win 8 times out of 10.
Yeah, I mean, for all the "we are Ole Miss" jokes,
yeah.
I mean, let's take a look at the losses last year. I think Auburn played better than Ole Miss. Auburn beat Ole Miss. Alabama clearly outplayed Ole Miss, and then Corral gets hurt in the bowl game, and but I mean, in general, on the close games, Ole Miss has been on the right end. Even when Arkansas is going up and down the field, Ole Miss makes the big play. Makes one more play, and I mean, I do think it goes to show that so much of the identity of a football program, and I think it's going to be even more so in the transfer era because rosters are going to. I don't think you're going to see, maybe Alabama, maybe Ohio State, maybe Texas and Texas A&M and USC can have continuity on a roster. But I mean, other than that, I don't think you're going to see a lot of continuity. And to me, what that's going to create is you're going to have coaches that are the identity of programs more so. And for all of the Joey Freshwater jokes and whatnot you can make, like Lane Kiffin does not lack belief in himself, and I think that it's very obvious that his teams maybe have somewhat of like an irrational self-confidence, but what I think has been impressive so far is it's a team that plays with confidence, but I don't feel like very rarely do they do something where I go, man, that was stupid.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
And it's the way they probably need to be playing, the way their program or their team is set up, not necessarily their program. But no, they've been well coached in all areas. I mean, defensively, we've talked about outside of some crap against Tulsa that we'll just move on from because it doesn't matter. They've tackled pretty effectively. They haven't had the dumb pre-snap penalties for the most part. I mean, they do look like an incredibly well coached team, and it's what you're speaking of too. You've got all these new players in new roles, whether it be transfers or freshmen. You have two new coordinators. You have to some aspects, some different terminology or systems or whatever, and you have a new quarterback and you have new people on defense actually calling the plays. The fact that they haven't had dumber pre-snap penalties or things like that, and they're pretty disciplined in the post-snap and the celebration stuff too, it's either a hellaciously good coaching job and it's kind of a miracle at the same time because you would have anticipated just sort of this irrational confusion. And when it does happen, Lane gets quite pissed. I mean, you had, that first drive today stalls because Micah Pettis has a false start over there, freshman, and it's playing a new position and he's he's kind of out of sync with what's going on. They had some of those things, but the ones they have, you understand how and why they happen. They're not just boneheaded maneuvers.
Yeah, I mean, it's to me, it's a situation where it's either you have a better advanced scouting organization or program than everyone, and you're maybe identifying better players or maybe guys that fit your brand. Also, I think maybe one of the smart things, like you kind of see it with like Malik Heath, where he's at Mississippi State and his mom's worried about him transferring to Ole Miss for, from the emotional aspect. But it's like, hey, I want to go there. And maybe that mindset gets better buy-in. And then maybe it's also a little bit of element of, hey, it is kind of some luck, but you kind of make your own luck. I mean, I don't think it's ever exclusively one thing. But to me, like that is what's really stood out the last 2 years, is that for the most part, Ole Miss has looked like the better coached teams when they go up against a lot of people. I mean, I think you could maybe have some gripes on the Alabama game, but Alabama had way more players, and, I think they were ready for that game. But, man, other than that, Ole Miss looks pretty prepared to play almost every time we watch them.
What do you like the next maturation step is for Dart? I mean, how good can he get? Not down the road, but right now. I mean, what are the next steps that can happen inside these 12 or 13 games?
Faster on the reads. Like there were a couple of times today where you can still feel like he's going through the checklist in his head of like, and to be fair to him, because I agree with you. We were talking about this on text. Like, I do not think you can dismiss the snaps from today.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that threw off the timing, and I think that made his job significantly more difficult. But it's kind of like going from, I think he has the basics down to going through his reads a little bit more quickly. Maybe like there was a couple of times like near the goal line where I felt like he was focused too much on the zone read element of like, give it, take it. I think if he would have pulled it and like flipped it out, I think they had some one-on-ones that they would have liked. We saw Corral do that a lot. Like to me, like that's kind of the next step. It's going through the checklist a little bit quicker and going from, getting the basics right to, getting into step 3 and 4 in the reading aspect.
So let's spin for Ole Miss. Vanderbilt next week, spin forward, that is. Auburn the week after. I mean, barring something crazy, they're 7-0 going to Baton Rouge, you would think.
I mean, I think that needs to be the expectation at this point, right?
Well, sure. I mean, if they lose to Vanderbilt or Auburn, it is at least a monumental change to the season on something from an upset standpoint. Yeah, I mean, they're going to be heavily favored in both these games.
Yeah, and I mean, to me, like that needs to be the expectation. And, what does that mean, like projecting out for the rest of the way? I don't know, but I mean, I think the whole goal with this team was they knew they were going to have about a month or so to bring this team along and kind of figure it out. They picked their quarterback. I think they probably had a better sense that they could rely on this defense at least early and then bring the offense along. I think they probably knew they had two studs in the running backs, and so that those guys could make enough plays that you'd be able to have enough offense. And so far, like, maybe it hasn't like seemed like it in real time, but that's kind of how these games have played out. You know what I mean? Like, first game was a little, jerky at times. Central Arkansas, we talked about, like, that game just was whatever it was. Like, moving on. They did what you should do to a lifeless team that's, playing for a coach that's going to get fired. They beat the absolute hell out of them, and they did it immediately. You know what I mean? Like, the Georgia Tech, they went on the road, they just put them away immediately. And then last week, they jump up on Tulsa, and yeah, they have to hold on and survive, but hey, they did it. And then this week, yeah, the big crowd, and like, let's be clear, like, there was some risk for Kiffin to say what he said this week and to, put all the onus on the fans. And, if that backfires, like, there's a lot of people like that kind of creates like a, you want us to spend all this money, you want us to do this, and then you can't even get the job done. Like, we did our job. Like, what about you?
It shows his level of capital.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I mean, to me, like, this is maybe like a small thing, and maybe some people don't think much of it. I think the fact that Ole Miss was able to, like, execute the stripe out and make it look good on TV, like I think that kind of shows a different day and age. Like, I don't know, man, the team that I grew up going to watch, like, that would never been pulled off. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you couldn't even get people to wear the same color to the games when I was growing up. And, I just think there's a different level of buy-in. And, does that mean that this is like a transformation of where this program is in the pecking order of the league? I don't know. But I mean, these are the types of starts that you need. I mean, backing up a 10-win season with the opportunity to have another big season, like, that's kind of how it starts. Like, I know Oregon was in a different league, but that's kind of how it started. You had Bilotti. Like, yeah, you got Nike to help and to finance a lot of it, but, like, you do have to win on the field. Like, that's the other thing. Like, you can have all these program and institutional advantages, but you also have to win to help build. And right now, Ole Miss is at least showing that they could be one of these teams that has completely transformed where they are in the pecking order, in a short, in 3 years, really?
Well, look, it's been my thing, and I've harped on this, and I've been a little just monotonous with the same thing over and over and over again. But Ole Miss had needed to become a normal SEC football team, and what that means is you just win a lot of freaking games. You don't have the side show stuff. You do neat things like today. I mean, it was a Chamber of Commerce day. The weather was perfect. The stripe thing looked really good on TV. It was a completely full house. The students showed up. All the premium areas looked pretty full. And they just sort of went out and they won a football game against a top 10 opponent. Kentucky was ranked number 7 in the country. And what it does show you is, you look, Ole Miss has not been efficient over the course of the last decade every year. I mean, they've had some clunkers, they've had some errors, and they've had all this stuff, all this probation. But they've gone, and I get that it's not the same. I get the Sugar Bowl is not what it was 25 years ago or 50 years ago, or anything like that. But they've been to 3 Access Bowls, which means at the end of the regular season, you're 12th or better in the country from the way you're ranked. They've done that 3 times. They've done a lot of stuff here where they're just a normal team that expects to win. They're not even necessarily the plucky upstart or like they're not even kind of the Cinderella story of looking up and go, oh, that's cute. They just win games now.
Well, think about it in these terms. If instead of the 4-team playoff, if they would have gone to the 12-team playoff at the beginning, Ole Miss would have 3 playoff appearances. LSU would have 2.
Oh.
Now,
Interesting.
LSU would have a national title. LSU would have a national title. I do not believe that Ole Miss would have a national title. And so, yeah, I mean, but I mean, you know what I mean? Like, that does show, like, to me, like, that does show that there are the makings here. And the other thing that's fascinating to me is in this era where I believe the halves are going to separate at a very high level, like, it's kind of what I talked about all summer. The most interesting thing to me about the SEC this year was the race for 3. Well, now we're going to find out the race for 3, you know, perhaps beginning next year. I'm doubtful, but, you know, maybe. The race for 3 is going to be the race for a playoff spot at the minimum, and perhaps the race for 4 is a playoff spot. And we've talked about it, about whether or not being a playoff team will help you as a program. I'm resigned to the fact of, well, it can't hurt. You know what I mean? Like, any type of, like, success that you can build on, any milestones you can build on, like, that's going to help. And so that's kind of what they're trending toward.
Because the playoff is not even necessarily, it's about when they do expand to 12. It's about getting into the playoff, and then you also get potentially that home game in the first round. Winning that's a big deal. It's what does change. And I do think it'll be a little different than the NFL. You know, I think in some ways getting into the playoff and every round you advance to is this feather in the cap thing that's almost like going to and winning bowls, except bigger in the past and the way that used to be. Because, you know, I mean, we talk about, you know, the Giants or the Saints or whatever. We're not going, hey, well, hey, they made the divisional round. That was awesome. Or, you know, whatever. No, it's did they make the Super Bowl?
Well,
They do that, they win. In college, it's completely different. Every round is a big deal that elevates your program.
To your point, it's going to be on a smaller scale. It's going to be like the basketball tournament.
Yeah.
Now, what we're going to have is we're going to have some coach that puts together a hot run, and he's going to wind up getting a big job because of playoff performance. Yeah. But, you know, it's going to be like we talked about it. Well, this is a Sweet 16 team. You know, we talk about it. This is a team that can win a playoff game. Like, it's going to be very similar to like the basketball tournament, where we have this understanding of not every team can win the national title, but sometimes getting to the second weekend. You know, I'm sure we'll start doing that. This is a second weekend college football team. And, you know, this is a team that can get to the Final Four. This, you know what I mean? Like, we'll start having those distinctions. And I think that's what's going to be I think that will be like kind of the standard to watch moving forward. God, I should have taken Oklahoma State.
What are you doing on TV1 right now? What is the method here?
Well, right now it's Alabama and Arkansas, and I'm kicking
Alabama
myself because I didn't
out physicaling and out scheming the shit out of Arkansas right now.
And I didn't bet it. I got scared.
I mean, this looks
the only thing I only have it in picks. And I'm kicking myself.
So are we better off with Oklahoma State Baylor or State A&M on the main screen?
Has that game? I didn't even realize that game kicked off.
Yeah, they've kicked now.
I've got Iowa State -3. I mean, I love the Kansas story as much as everyone, but I'm not sure that they should be. Like, that feels like a line. It should have been 10 or 11. Spencer Sanders going for it all. Somehow still manages to find double coverage. Good for him.
We'll be done with this before the night games. Any kind of new takes on our schedule the rest of the day? What are you looking for?
Let's see. All right, what do we tonight? We have we need the Georgia kill everybody tour to keep rolling on. Okay. Temple Memphis backdoor covered. That killed me. Let's see what else I have later. I feel like it's one of those.
Real quick, what was the final in TCU? And Neil doesn't agree with me. He thinks they're going to be fine. Am I the only one that completely does not believe in Brent Venables at all? And I think he's going to be a disaster at Oklahoma relative to that program.
Well, the game. I mean, they were going to get beat even if he stayed in. The game got out of hand when Gabriel got that was like a cheap shot.
Mm-hmm.
Gabriel got knocked out with a cheap shot, but you know, I don't think Venables is a sure thing. I do think, at least unlike a lot of defensive coordinators that get their first job, like I do think he hired Levy, and Levy's getting to run his own offense. Like I don't feel like Venables is meddling in that. I think the biggest problem that Venables is having is Clemson bought him a lot more defensive players than Oklahoma has left him.
Russell Harris was super chatting a question. Says Chase and Jeffrey, Steve Feinbaum. He only wanted to talk to Suss about Lane leaving Ole Miss. Yeah, I talked to Nick about that in the press box today for a few minutes. Apparently asked about multiple jobs, then switched into Dion and did that instead of the game. I get that it's clickbait and it's Lane and all these type of things. And at some point he'll go do something. I mean, I don't think he's going to coach at Ole Miss for 35 years, but he does seem pretty pleased here right now. And I'm not getting into that conversation. My question is, do you think that because of his profile, this continues every time a job comes open, or as Ole Miss wins more, it becomes minimized to some degree depending on the program that is looking for a coach?
I think it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. I do not believe that Paul is just stirring the pot. I do think Paul hears things, but I think what Paul hears is agent talk. And, the reality is if you're one of these fan bases right now and you find out that your fan base, it's no different for Ole Miss when Ole Miss hired Kiffin. Like, if you're one of these fan bases and you're frustrated, aren't you pretty excited about Kiffin?
Oh, God, yes.
So, I think
what is the negative to Lane Kiffin as your coach at this point?
The negative is that you lose control of your brand because the brand becomes Lane. But okay.
It's college football. This is a coach-driven brand league.
Does Ole Miss have any problems with Lane Kiffin and Juice Kiffin being the face of their program? Because best I can tell, everyone seems to be on board.
It makes no logical sense for Lane Kiffin to take the Auburn job. None.
I agree, but at the same time, I don't know. I mean, the question for me is, have we entered an era in which our perceptions of what the good jobs are have been completely disrupted? And I kind of hate the whole be a disruptor, but I don't know. I still believe that if Auburn were to get its stuff together, it's easier to probably win big at Auburn than it is at Ole Miss. But I'm very much remember when I used to push back on Neil when Neil was like, I don't think you can do this exclusively through the transfer portal. My answer was not oh, I do think you can do it. My answer is, I don't know. We haven't seen anyone try to do it. So is it entirely possible that Ole Miss has figured this out and Auburn is stuck in a era in which, I mean, for better or worse, Lane gets to run the program. For better or worse at Auburn, the same people seem to be still running the program. And the question for me is, if Auburn were to turn the program over to Lane and let him run it the way that he wants to run it, is Auburn still not as good of a job as Ole Miss? I don't know. That. I personally tend to agree with you. I think at Auburn, it's the ultimate example of you literally are put on that job to be fired on that job.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, Gene Chiswick's got a national championship there.
No, look, you can win at Auburn. Auburn historically has had more money and more resources at Ole Miss. And I don't know why we're doing this, but whatever. I'll finish the thought and then we'll move on to something else. But they've had more money, more resources than Ole Miss. They've won national titles in recent periods of time. One, obviously a transcendent player. But in 2004, they were undefeated and would have played for it with Jason Campbell and those guys. They've been good. They played for it with Nick Marshall, for God's sake.
Gus was a tipped ball away from winning a national title.
Yeah. So, no, look, I mean, they have whatever. But in today's world, Auburn has shown no ability to get out of its own way. frankly, in much the same way Texas has, where they're in Texas is farther ahead than Auburn. Auburn just fired an AD because they wouldn't hire Kevin Steele as a head football coach. And God knows what they're going to do with this search coming up. I guess my point is, if I'm Lane today in 2022, I'm 16-3 at Ole Miss in the last 19, and for better or worse, Ole Miss is pulling in one direction more than they have at any point, at least that I've had an understanding of how this kind of stuff works, whether it be my career or my fandom, my life, or whatever. And I know that Lane has ultimate authority over everything inside that program, and if he asks for it, they'll bust their ass trying to find it. To me, that's a better situation than at Auburn, where you just hope to God the boosters get out of the way and let you run your program. But at the same time, they're going to be worried about prayer circles and the Auburn family and all these things that do not align with Lane just being the brand and running his football program.
No, and for better or worse, Ole Miss, for all of the knocks that you can have on it, they are comfortable letting a coach run the program the way they want to do it. You know what I mean? Like, Cut got to run the program the way he wanted to. It went from everything was open with Tuberville to all of a sudden, they're running Knoxville East. And he got to do it the way he wanted to do it. Orgeron, for better or worse, got to do it the way he wanted to do it. Then you flip it to Nutt. He got to do it the way he wanted to do it. Then Freeze, he got to do it the way he wanted to do it. And Luke got to do it the way he wanted to do it. Now Lane's getting to do it the way that he wants to do it. Like, I do think Ole Miss sometimes gets a little unfairly criticized. Like, yes, they don't have the unlimited budget that Alabama does. But what you're also starting to see is now that the Big Ten and the SEC are separating from everywhere, and now that Ole Miss has the advantage of money and stature that it's never really had, Ole Miss isn't bad at this. Now,
it should only get better.
Yeah, but there's also the well, what about if everyone else? What if the schools that have the advantages get their shit together? I mean, you also have to look at it this way. Lane is in a position where Auburn is down, LSU's in transition, Arkansas is probably up. Historic, they're up. A&M is unfulfilled expectations right now.
Well, welcome to A&M. When has that changed?
Yeah, I mean, I do still think, though, with Jimbo, there's a Kirby element of we better get all our jokes off now, because I do think there's going to come a point where eventually they're just going to have so much talent that it's going to win just by existing. But the question that so many of these coaches will ask is, if all things are equal, where is it easier for me to win? And that, the other question, though, is like, I don't know, what's Lane's career goals? Like, is it to win a national title? I don't know. Like, if Lane's goal is to live the most comfortable life and compete on Saturdays, I mean, there's not many people that are going to give Lane what Ole Miss is giving him, which is, I presume next year he's going to make $9-10 million, whatever the number is. If you have the down year, you're not toast. I mean, because
it's very likely you have a down year with the portal the way it is. It's possible.
Well, I mean, ask Michigan State.
Now, the thing is, make your down year still a competitive year. I mean, that's what Lane has done. I mean, Ole Miss's down year is not 4-8.
No, I mean, that's the thing.
7-5.
Like, make your down year. Or, 5-5 in the whatever was it? 5-5 in the COVID year. I mean, listen, I think he's in the perfect spot, but he's Lane Kiffin, man. Like, I think he's, I think trying to predict his behavior is not exactly
He
a
has less
business I'd want to get
wanderlust
into.
than he did 18 months ago.
I think that's fair.
Do you think his
But
next
I don't know
job is a college
how long
job
does
or an
that
NFL
last?
job?
I think college. I don't think the NFL lifestyle's for him.
Okay.
Because, I mean, no one loves to tell you how hard they work like a college football coach. Lane's getting a lot more time down in Boca as the Ole Miss head coach, I think, than he would be in the NFL.
It's more regimented, though, schedules.
It is,
The off
but at
time's
the
the
same
off time.
time, at the same time, you know, most likely if you're taking an NFL job, you're taking a job that doesn't have a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
So then you're now getting into the situation of you're hired to be fired. So, you know, to me, I don't know. Lane Kiffin, to me, it's tough to be the brand in the NFL. Like, Lane Kiffin, to me, just feels more like a college coach.
Yeah, no, I agree with you because I mean he likes the SEC, he likes the fun, he likes all the Twitter, all the stuff. It's neat to him. He enjoys it. It's almost. I mean, frankly, it is a pastime. It's not almost a pastime. It's why Ole Miss and Kiffin are really good fits for each other in tons of different ways. Last thing, Kentucky, has this changed anything about how you sort of see the rest of their season?
Not really. Didn't you feel like they were kind of what you expected?
I thought they were completely what I expected, honestly. Like 100%. Like I thought Kentucky played the exact game I thought Kentucky would play. It was just a matter of whether Ole Miss could be better than that.
Yeah, I don't feel any differently about Kentucky than I did beforehand. Like I think Tennessee's going to give them some problems. But other than that, like Georgia's obviously going to manhandle them. But other than that, like I think what Kentucky has done very smartly, they have built a team that can beat South Carolina, that can beat Vanderbilt, that can compete with Florida while Florida's down.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they get State from the other side. I think this is the year where they get State at home, right?
It is in Lexington, I think, yeah.
You know, I think they have very smartly built a program that can go 9-3 and, you know, win a bowl game 10-3. But I think what we saw today is when they have to push the pedal, like even Ole Miss didn't make them push the pedal like, you know, I'm sure Lane wanted them to, but they did have to push the pedal a little bit today. And it just felt like every time they had to do that, they felt uncomfortable.
Well, Levis was uncomfortable with it.
I mean, I think it's not a surprise to me because I didn't really think they were that good coming up front. The one thing that would concern me if I'm a Kentucky football fan, all 7 of you, that offensive line was not a Kentucky offensive line that we're used to seeing. Mm-hmm. I did not feel like they I mean, didn't you feel like more times than not, Ole Miss won the line of scrimmage? Now, Rodriguez was a very good back, and he'd get the extra yards, but I felt like in general, I felt like Ole Miss did a pretty good job up front.
I'm going to assume, without looking at it, if you take out any kind of chunk play, Kentucky averaged fewer than 3 yards before they were touched. And it might be even less than that. It might have been like 1.5. I'll check it tomorrow for Pro Football Focus. I mean, there were very few holes that the running back didn't have to make it with, as you said, just kind of fighting through tacklers, fighting through people, and getting that extra yard, because Rodriguez is incredibly good at that. No, look, Kentucky's not great up front. They're fine. I mean, I think Tennessee's going to beat them.
I can do it real quick. So 75 minus 47 is 38, right?
Sure, I'll take your word for it.
28, sorry.
Yeah.
So Rodriguez averaged this is unreal. He had 40 yards. 47 came after contact.
Did he really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
Oh no, I'm sorry. That was no, hang on. I'm sorry. That was receiving. Because he caught the swing passes out of 72 yard. Yeah. So he averaged 3.8 per carry. There's no way. I bet he was closer to 2 on yards.
Yeah,
Whatever the stuff rate.
yeah, before contact.
Yeah.
That's my guess, something like that. So I don't know. What's that line going to be tomorrow? Ole Miss and Vanderbilt.
Who doggies? 24, probably. Ooh. Right.
Okay.
Let me hang on. Let me look at quick numbers. 3. So Bama was what, 40?
It was 40, yes.
I'll say 21.5.
Okay. And that's about the right number. I mean, it would not shock me if Ole Miss covered that, and it wouldn't shock me if Ole Miss goes up there and kind of sleepily wins the game by 17 points.
Because last year, wasn't it like 28 or something?
Yeah, it was 27-28 last year. Vandy's off today, right?
Yeah. Vandy's. I think it'll be north of 17. I think it'll be north of 17, but under 24. So somewhere around 21.
Yeah. All right, bud. Appreciate it. Let's talk Thursday.
All right, sounds good. All right.
Was Jeffrey right? Yeah, we were talking about Lane, and not even really from a negative way or a way of, hey, he's going to go here or here. That wasn't the point. The point was that he's in a really good fit, and a lot of these jobs, they just don't make sense. I mean, it's not that Auburn's a worse job or whatever. It's the fact that they haven't gotten their stuff together. Lane has rebuilt Ole Miss quickly. He's not in rebuild mode anymore, and every time Ole Miss wins a game like today, their national exposure and their national brand, which is pretty strong anyway. Ole Miss is a football program that's known around the country. It just elevates a little more. It makes people, I mean, I see Russell and other people in the stream talking about it. It makes people more willing to donate. It just sort of enhances everything over the course of this, where when you look at the entire complexity of the country from a job standpoint, it's a really good job. I mean, yeah, maybe it's not Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, LSU, Florida, if it's got its stuff together, even though they're mostly 2 coaches more than they are a program that's done everything over the course of decades. But it's getting more unified by the day. And I don't mean that from a Grove Collective standpoint. I just mean that in general. As Jeffrey said, it's. I mean, you guys are in the stream. You've been here for some of you longer than I've been doing this. It's not every Ole Miss program that would have pulled off that stripe out today. I mean, I know Kentucky had a lot of fans in the stands. I know they brought a lot of people. It was the first Kentucky game in Oxford since 2010. I mean, there's elements to all that, but the crowd did a hell of a job for an 11 a.m. game today. Usually 11 a.m. would be a little sleepy. It was also 11 a.m. where Highway 6 was a freaking parking lot until, I mean, after kickoff for sure. I mean, it was rough. It was really, really, really rough. So I don't know. I mean, today was a big day for Ole Miss. Getting to 5-0, getting to next week, having a chance to sort of put this thing together and be not just in the conversation of expectations or 8 wins or 9 wins or, contemplating trying to get back to a 10-win season, whether it be pre or post bowl, but staying in the real national conversation. That's what Ole Miss did with a really, really gutty win today over Kentucky. We're still waiting on Neil. It shouldn't be too terribly long for him, I wouldn't think. So what I'm going to do, actually, I know I've got Brian on standby. I can holler at him, but I'm going to go ahead. A lot of you guys are here. I'm going to open up calls. If anybody would like to call, you can do that. We can go over stats. We can do some different stuff, but we're just kind of waiting around. So let's open that up. There is the number. It is 662-259-7556. If anybody wants to give it a call, chat about whatever. I currently have on State and Texas A&M. It's getting close to the end of the first quarter. 0-0 still there in Starkville for that game. Yeah, I just turned Alabama Arkansas off. It just didn't feel like time for that right now. You guys can tell me if Arkansas scores or if we get back into a game a little bit there. Let's see. Let's go to who are we talking to?
T. David Hedrick.
Hey, T. How are you doing?
How you doing, Chase?
I'm good.
I mean, Chance. How are you, Chance?
Yeah, I'm awesome. Chance, Chet, Seth, if it's Ed O talking. I mean, I answer to a lot of names. It's all good either way.
Man, I never call in, but it just was kind of worked out today where I could catch you in between more important callers such as Brian Scott and Neil, of course. I mean Nick, but I mean, first of all, I want to say awesome win the Revs, but second of all, I want to say I can't wait to get your book. I ordered 4 signed copies, one for myself and 3 to you're welcome 3 to hand out to some family members that are going to love it. I can't wait to get those in. Man, there's a weird tradition that we kind of started during the baseball playoffs this past summer, which is instead of cooking like your traditional kind of, let's say, Ole Miss fare, Abner's chicken tenders and sauce and all that stuff, we would cook what we thought the other team would be cooking. So if we were playing the Razorbacks, we'd cook, let's say whole hog or pork butt or whatever, right? So today I was scrambling around all week. I was like, well, what's my fare going to be? But I was looking at bourbon chicken and, all this stuff. So I remembered that you had said something about hot browns,
mm-hmm.
the sandwiches. And so I had some Kentucky people lighting me up for the past 48 hours, talking all sorts of smack. And I did finally get out of them what a real hot brown was. They sent me the recipe, and they're amazing, by the way. I made them up at like maybe 10 o'clock this morning and took some pictures of my kids just devouring them. And was hoping I was going to be able to send those pictures around the horn. And, as Fate has it, I was. And I got my sweet revenge with a little more classy way than saying, hey, F you, we won, or whatever it might be, right? Because that's pretty much what they were telling me yesterday and the day before.
Kentucky fans,
so I don't know.
They were on one. Like, that was pretty aggressive bunch here the last few days.
That's the absolute perfect way to say it. I mean, I posted on the board, they were chippy AF. I mean, they were aggressively, and what's funny is they love to troll me with Lane Kiffin stuff, and I just kept shaking my head thinking, I mean, Bob Stoops. I mean, you're comparing this kind of, bigger, kind of marshmallowy, steak and potatoes, meat and potatoes type guy to Lane Kiffin. But they just kept going on and on. And so, anyways, I don't know if anybody else has any traditions, like that or whatever. But I'd love for people to post them on the board if they've got it. Man, y'all do a great job as always. This week seemed to be, a little more work for you. I know the game. The build up to the game was huge, so you had a lot of content that y'all wanted to get in with all the podcasts and then the Grove Collective stuff and then everything else. I mean, how late are you going to sleep tomorrow morning?
4:30, because it's me. I mean, I can't. Yeah, nothing I can do. It just is what it is. It's fine. I'm completely resigned to it. I'm an 80. Like, it's what worries me a little bit as I get older. I think it's gonna get even worse because my dad would get up at like 3:30 in the morning, and I'm like, that's where this thing's trending. Is I'm going to be like the 3:30 in the morning kind of guy as this thing moves on. What was your heart rate the last 3 plays or so? Were you completely and utterly nervous? Did you even give him a chance? What'd you think?
Yeah, that's a fair question. Definitely elevated heart rate. I guess there was 2 minutes to go or 2 and change, if I remember right. Man, they hit that big gator and they were down in the red zone. That's when my heart. That's when I wanted to rip my own heart out at that point. I wanted to, but I was in the same exact little location that we had won the national championship and I have like one seat in my house where I would sit, and I would have like a drink on the left and the TV controller on the right, and like I would have to touch both of them at the same time to get the mojo working.
Yeah.
And then my buddy Braden, who also went to Ole Miss, good guy, class of '97 as well. He was standing in this little spot in front of the TV over to like the left, and so I had another buddy that was coming, and I was like, I was over there, and I said, okay, you have to sit in my seat, and I'll have to go stand over in this spot over here where Braden stands, and it works. So sit down, just humor me, please sit down, touch that glass, touch that controller. I'll go stand over here in this seat and fold my arm, and this is gonna work out. And when the fumble happened, that was just it was every bit. I was almost every bit as exciting as that last pitch.
Yeah.
When we closed it out, I mean I'm not sure anything could compare to that unless Ole Miss gets to the championship game and wins it somehow. But that it was a great moment. It was definitely a great moment. Look, this is shaping up to be this could be the year of the Rebel.
Today was a big one. It's moving in a good direction for Ole Miss. I mean, they get these next two to really set up quite the night. Or I'm assuming night. I'm hoping for a night because I have a book signing that morning in Baton Rouge here for Ole Miss and LSU in a few weeks. So hey, do me a favor, put the hot brown recipe on the board for people. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, will do. And I'll let you guys go. I'm hoping to hear Neil call in soon.
Yeah, I'm waiting on him right now. We'll get to him as soon as he gets here. I appreciate it, bud.
Absolutely. Take care.
I was getting a call there while we were finishing up there. Glad David called in. So if you want to call back, I'll have that ability to answer now. Obviously, I can only take one at a time. So all good. I was missing a call. Call back. We'll get you on the line. Yeah, so what's going on with Bryce Young? Is he banged up? Do I need to flip over? He's in the injury tent. I've still got State Texas A&M on right now, but this game's kind of bogging down at the moment. I'll flip it back over to Alabama and Arkansas. Who's on the line?
Stephen in Mandeville.
Hey, Stephen. How are you?
Hey, Chase. I'm doing well. Thank you. And thank you for doing this after the games. Win or lose, I have really come to make this part of my Saturday routine. So really very much enjoy it. The analysis that you provide, and Jeff, and when Neil, he's on, everybody else. But would you say that the Sean McDonough, Todd Blackledge, ESPN crew, is that the second crew, in your opinion, only behind Herb Street and Fowler, or do you think maybe Tessitore and McElroy are that second best crew?
I don't know if it's like, necessarily written down somewhere, but I have been interpreting this as the second crew recently. I could be wrong. I mean, I don't know if there's some way to whatever, but as I look at it, because they've been bouncing around. I mean, they haven't had a lot of 11 o'clock games. It felt like they took a better crew for this game this time. I did think that was the case.
And I know that this has been discussed on the weekly podcast.
Sure.
I believe Neil even mentioned that with the addition of Texas and Oklahoma to the conference, that these bigger games may be more prominent in that 11 a.m. spot as well. And notice no one's talking about the kickoff now after a win. And the crowd came over great from my vantage point. Very active, very lively, great ESPN crew in the booth. So, given the choice, I would rather evening kickoff, mid-afternoon, second choice, 11 a.m. would be the last, of course. But I do believe that this is a reality that is going to become more prominent moving forward.
Ole Miss really maximized everything to do with today. Everything looked great. It came in after game day. There wasn't the sleepy crowd that we see so much at 11 o'clock. It was really energetic. I mean, I went today for that reason, to make sure I saw some of it before I had to leave and come do the show. But it was dynamic. I mean, I thought that they really, really got there and put their best foot forward. My issue with the 11-6:30 game, and again, not to bog down too much because that's not necessarily the topic for today, but is that I do think, and I'm sure it's ratings based to an extent. And it's teams that have always done certain things, but there's no doubt that ESPN believes certain teams almost kind of belong in certain time spots. And I think that Ole Miss, as it does what it did this morning, as it continues to win games, I think Ole Miss is one of these programs that can elevate itself if there's a coin flip, can get into more night games and more 6:30 games. And then also you have to give the administration credit. They left the Grove open a little longer today. They're allowing people to maximize versus just the normal 3 hours after kick. So in all ways around, I thought today was really an A+ day for Ole Miss.
I agree, and I typically don't watch SEC Nation. Personally, I find it kind of hokey. Each his own. But today I found myself watching a decent amount of it, and I think it blended well with the 11 a.m. kickoff. Having that 11 a.m. kickoff, being able to have live action shots of players warming up, it just seemed to flow really well. Now, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but I wake up this morning only to learn that Sling is in contract negotiations with Disney Network, and I'm a Sling subscriber. So then I was scrambling to figure things out and end up going with Hulu, which I've had before in the past. I've had them all, so I'm satisfied. But that was not, and I'll end with this because I know this isn't the topic for today, but I had not heard of anything relative to Sling being in negotiations with Disney, and I have my finger on the pulse, relatively speaking, with those types of things. So for me to wake up and it be kind of a brick in the face, I think a lot of other folks had to be blindsided as well.
Because it was Dish too. It wasn't just Sling.
Well, my father-in-law called me and wanted to come down. The same thing, Dish as well, because they're Dish subscribers, and he was lamenting that as well. But anyway, but no, I just from the optics of today, the crowd showed up. It came across really well on the television. They seemed to be in it throughout, and it was a great spectator game. You talk about that football junkie or just that random individual that watches periodically football. That was a great game to watch, regardless if you had any skin in the game. It really was. So I will be interested to see what the ratings are for this game, because last year the Arkansas game did really well in that time slot.
Mm-hmm.
So I would expect that to be the case as well, especially being so close late in the game. But I just thought it came over really well. I really, really did. And I just didn't know if you had any insights on, is ESPN trying to really find kind of like this marquee matchup for that 11 a.m. slot?
They want to
back
keep
end off of college game day.
Yeah, and it's one of those deals, and I'll kind of elaborate on this while I'm waiting for the call. But they want a competitive game to not let people switch over to Fox for Big Noon Saturday. Maybe it's not number one, number two. I mean, we've had way too much arguments on the side and the podcast about exactly where time slots are, but they don't want to give away that 11 o'clock slot. They want it to have a really competitive, good game there to keep people after game day and not have them flip over to Fox and then be channel surfing the rest of the day.
And I just, I don't know the dominoes that had to fall, but LSU at home next week is the 11 o'clock game against Tennessee. And I live 60 miles, east of Baton Rouge, and they are apoplectic. Big time. Big time about that.
They never get 11s. They deserve
they
that.
do.
Whatever. Yeah.
No, I completely agree. But Chase, thank you. I don't want to hold y'all up anymore, but that was at the tip of my mind, and I thought it was appropriate to contact you and just share with the folks listening that, 11 a.m. aren't the number one choice, but I think the Ole Miss crowd and the university in itself handled it extremely well.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I appreciate it, bud. Thank you.
Take care, Chase. Good day.
Who's on the call?
What's up?
Hello? How you doing?
Corey from Amory and Pontotoc.
Yeah, I thought I recognized the number. How you doing, bud?
Man, I'm doing good. What's everybody's mood?
Well, nobody's in a bad mood. I mean, we were just talking about that's about as good as an 11 o'clock game at home with a full crowd and a win over a top 10 team, and something there at the end to get your heart rate up a little bit. Also, seemed like they got out of the game pretty healthy for the most part. I mean, look, I get that it's not going in the Grove and watching the games before your game and having that 6:30 kick, but I bet it's pretty nice also to get out of there about 2:15, get back to your tent, and then you got 4 hours after a win to just chill out and take it all in.
I literally saw Dart take the last snap and get on a knee and pulled into my driveway at 3:01, which was awesome. So I'm watching football. I'm going to light the grill, and I wonder if a lot of people hit that sweet spot of the Ole Miss win and the Kentucky cover. That makes a lot of sense to me.
I had it in picks.
Yeah. And hey, you know what? Underrated. I do not like them in basketball, but they were some of the. I don't know if anybody else had similar experience, but I got to the Grove at about 8:30 and kind of just walked into a tent. The nicest fans. They were. I was like the Pied Piper. I had about 12 of them behind me. Half of them were trying to get to the Union. Half of them were trying to get to the Lyceum to meet people. And I was like, okay, y'all go there. Y'all go follow me. Go straight. But they seem like a nice fan base and were really complimentary of Oxford and were excited about the prospects of getting to play there more than once every 12 years. So
I'm really glad they are changing that. That whole 6-3 thing is going to be so much nicer to get everybody in everybody else's stadium over a 4-year period.
Right. They had a group that I had talked to had less nice things to say. Let's just say about other local places they had been to a lot. So they seem like nice people, and I'm sure glad to escape with a W. Can't make it to the Auburn game, but I was wanting to meet Grind. Hopefully we can make that work where a lot of people can meet him. But other than that, I just was calling to check in, and have Brian and Jeffrey and Neil called in?
I have talked to Jeffrey, kept him a good while, and Neil is telling me he's available in the next few minutes. So we'll get to him, and then I've got probably come back to calls, and I've kind of got Brian on retainer for whenever that's necessary if it is. It's kind of
I got you. But don't forget, I want a book signed sent to me. And I do not want to pay for it. So do that for me.
I think we can figure that out. Probably gonna be all right. What do you want the inscription to say, Corey? What would you like inside the book?
Just like you, never a doubt.
Hey, how bad's Amory going to beat Hatley Friday?
They're playing Friday. I didn't even know they're playing. Are they division still?
Yeah, I think so.
Name your score. I mean, I think they're pretty good. One of my really good friends' sons, the starting strong safety. He's Moranto. He's committed to play baseball at Northwest, but he's a I call him Walker Concussion Moranto because he stays concussed all the time. But I think they're pretty good. I think they're being the biggest 3A team helps. So
yeah, 3A is a much softer landing spot than 4A, isn't it? So yeah,
and they're gonna be the smallest 4A or the biggest 3A when they redo everything again. So
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see. All right, get after it, Cat.
All right, appreciate it, bud. Who we got on the line?
Hey, Chase, this is Mark from Tupelo.
Hey, Mark, what's up?
Hey, bud. So, two things very quickly. Great show, as you always do. I thought, I don't know if you watched Feinbaum yesterday, but he was a little critical of Kiffin, and I did predict to my friends that I had said, and I agreed with what Neil was saying, probably the best deliverer of the message is not Lane Kiffin making $9 million a year about people, what they should do with their tickets. But so Keith Carter comes in there, and I thought that was a very positive, great little tweet or whatever it was, little video that he sent out. But my question is this. So obviously we did what we needed to do. I was a nervous wreck the entire dead-gum second half. But going forward, do you think that our passing game is getting to the point to where it should be, or do you think we shouldn't keep looking for that? Let's just settle for the run game that we've kind of implemented? And by the way, and secondly or thirdly, did you think that Dart ran as much as you would have expected today? I'm gonna hang up and listen to your answers. Thank you, bud.
All right, appreciate it. And I'm going to answer this, and then I'm going to give Neil a call in a second. So if you're calling, I'm not ignoring you. I'm just going to get this and make sure I get Neil on, and then kind of out on top for him to finish content. The passing game has chances to get better because of how good the run game is. I do think there's more that they can do. I think Dart will continue to get more comfortable. I think you can see, or there's the opportunity to see tight ends be more involved as Trigg gets more comfortable and frankly just gets more consistent. I mean, you saw how pissed off Lane was at him early in the game. He had a catch later that they were on I guess that was at the end of the first half when they were driving down and threw the interception right after that because he sort of swerved back to the field rather than get out of bounds with the clock running down. Because of the way Ole Miss runs the ball, there should be more opportunities, but Ole Miss doesn't have the guy that takes the top off, really. They're a physical wide receiver group. They catch the ball. They don't really have drops, but it's more possession-based. It's not the big play down the field, run by everybody kind of deal. So that changes the look of things from a passing game standpoint. There's no doubt about that. And I thought that Dart gave it on a lot of RPOs today. He ran it a couple times because the snaps were where they had lost timing and they kind of had to do that. But yeah, he definitely did not run the ball the same. That was okay. I mean, you fed Judkins. It was sort of the way the pace of the game played out. It was really good. I mean, I thought the game plan made sense for Ole Miss today. There's some things they can tweak, some things they can get better at, but they moved the ball. A lot of their mistakes were self-inflicted. A lot of their mistakes were things that they just sort of did themselves. Kentucky didn't necessarily stop them a lot. For it to only be 22 points, Ole Miss dictated a lot of things. It just didn't. That did not translate into points from that standpoint. All right, let's get Neil on the call. I told him I'd call him in a second, so let's go ahead and do that. Calls, new call. How are you, Mr. McCready?
I am good. Let me get out of this press box area and into a quieter place. Hang on one second. I'll get into visiting team radio here.
You wouldn't be the first person to be a little loud today there, so I think you're probably okay if you want to go ahead and pick your voice up.
I think I can walk outside. I think I walked outside. Can you hear me okay now?
I can hear you fine.
Okay, good. Was trying not to disturb people writing. You know how it is on those tight games like that. Everybody's you can't really start writing until the game's basically over. Wasn't like last week where the column was written and you just inserted score.
It created problems for me even because observations are completely different if Ole Miss wins versus loses that game. And then like 10 minutes after it was over, I went, hell, I've got to get all this set up and get moving. And I had a just abomination there early on of trying to get all the stuff produced and set up, and it was kind of clunky, but it'll be all right. Everybody's in a good mood. It would have been a really big problem had Ole Miss lost the game and I don't have my crap straight and then we're all over the place. That would have been a bit of an issue, but everybody was all right. So many different places to start. I mean, I won't keep you too terribly long because I know you still got writing to do, but I guess start with anything important out of the press conference. What was Lane like? Kind of set that up, and then I'll go back through the game a little bit.
Lane was fine. I think Lane was already shifting a little bit into the mode that he's going to have to shift into, which is, they're probably going to move up in the polls. They're going to either get into the top 10 or they're going to push the top 10. There is going to start being a different level of hype about this team. We talked about it last week. I feel really good about all the stuff that we wrote and did and said, because we said for a long time this was going to be a really good game between two really good teams, and it was probably going to come down to the fourth quarter. And there were some people who pushed back and they said Kentucky sucks and they're overrated and blah, blah, blah. They're not. They don't suck. They're not overrated. Levis has some ball security issues, but Levis also has some serious talent, and he is a threat. And Berrien Brown is a stud on the outside, and Rodriguez is a very good back. And they are a dangerous team. They're a physical defense. They swarm. you knew this was going to be a really good game between two really good teams. And one of the things that we kept saying, and now it holds true, and it would have held true had Kentucky won. The winner of this game is in a rarefied air a little bit now in terms of the conversation that's going to take place. Ole Miss is going to be 10, 11 or so in the AP poll. They get at Vanderbilt next week. I mean, I think realistically that's a game Ole Miss wins. They get Auburn back here in 2 weeks from today, and this place will be a zoo again, and they should win. And they're going to be 7-0.
Going to Baton Rouge.
Going to Baton Rouge on October the 22nd to play LSU, and we'll see what LSU is.
Probably at 2:30 on CBS.
Yeah, I mean, almost certainly. So, you know, they're in a different conversation. And to answer your question in a really, really, really long-winded fashion, Lane was, I think, already shifting to, hey, it was just one win. You know, it was a win that could have gone either way. It was a game that could have gone either way. There was, you know, you got to be careful not to make too much of it when you do that, because that's how you can get in trouble. And he's right. And yet at the same time, I think he acknowledged that given the timing of this weekend, a lot of recruits here, the whole Grove Collective reboot and all of that stuff, and national media that was here and stuff, this was a really big moment. And, you know, a week after criticizing the fans, he gave the fans at least a possibility of a chance that they contributed to the win, because Kentucky moves the ball to the 6-yard line and they score a touchdown on the next play. It got negated because of an illegal shift. And he said it's possible that the reason they were still moving and didn't execute that play was because of the crowd noise down there in the, what end zone is that? I guess that's the north end zone. I still get end zones confused here.
Yeah.
You think I'd get my directions after all the years I've covered this team, but I still screw it up. North end zone, you know, where the students were, and it was really loud, and Kentucky had a mistake. And then the next play, you know, Jared Ivey, who I just wrote a story, my game story's kind of built around him. Jared Ivey makes that play that obviously will be remembered for a long time, especially if this ends up being a special season. So that's kind of what he touched on. He knows that they're going to start getting talked about a lot in a different type of conversation, not just a good program, but a program that's starting to push for elite status, a program that is going to wake up tomorrow very much in the SEC West race. I mean, certainly early, very early. And Alabama's winning at Arkansas big. Alabama is an elite program, but who knows?
And I mean, you hope he's not hurt just for his own health, but what about the shoulder? I mean, what if?
Yeah, you wonder. I mean, I haven't seen it because I've been writing, but you wonder, you know, was that a labrum? Was that you know, what was that? And I'm told that Young's, you know, the way he kind of slammed his helmet down and stuff, he obviously felt like something was wrong. And if suddenly they don't have the Heisman winner and they're going with a young quarterback and they have to come here, they still have to go to Knoxville, they still have to go to Baton Rouge. You know, I mean, of the 4 games that they had that we talked about, with Arkansas being the first, Arkansas was the easiest matchup for them because Arkansas is so one-dimensional on defense. They can't stop the pass. Well, those other teams, I mean, Tennessee's not a great defensive team. Ole Miss has a chance to be a pretty damn good defensive team. They held Kentucky to 320 some odd yards today. Levis was effective, but he never hit the deep ball. He was 18 of 24 for 220 and a couple of touchdowns, but he didn't hit that deep ball. They took those deep shots with Brown, but they never connected. I don't know, Chase. I'm just talking. It was. I mean, look, I think we're going to get about 3 weeks of looking ahead to LSU and talking about what might be. And between then, Alabama's got to play a couple of games and potentially got to play in Knoxville without Bryce Young, which would be a pretty big storyline.
Alabama now up 28-0 on Arkansas. 2:50 to go.
Simpson in a quarterback?
No, Jalen Milroe is playing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, no. I think Simpson's third team right now. A.J. McCarron insinuating some sort of AC joint and also some potential rotator cuff situation.
Yeah, you wonder whenever you see stuff like that, you think labrum, rotator cuff, stuff like that. That's certainly unfortunate because everybody who has ever been around Bryce Young raves about him.
I talked to Jeffrey for a while and just kind of what today meant for Ole Miss, sort of the Ole Miss program in general. I guess we sort of were dovetailing it off Feinbaum and all his Auburn questions and all that stuff to Suss. But Ole Miss maximized this 11 o'clock thing today as well as you possibly can. The stadium was striped. I mean, they did a hell of a job that I didn't expect them to do, if I'm just being completely honest. It was packed. They win the game. They win the game on a big play. They sort of win the game the Kentucky way, which right now is the Ole Miss way, the way they're playing this season. Kiffin showing.
Can I give you a hot take?
Yeah, sure.
Can I give you a hot take from somebody who I think views this pretty damn objectively?
Okay.
This stadium, and I'm sitting at the 41-yard line right now on the outside looking out on it. This stadium looks much better on TV and in person during the daytime than it does at night. I'm just going to tell you that from the way the kids look at it. That's my opinion. I believe this firmly.
Right.
It's a gorgeous stadium in the daytime. At night, because of the way the lights are done and stuff, it's kind of dark. It looks kind of gloomy sometimes, in my opinion. This place, like last year for the Arkansas game, a few years ago when they beat Alabama here during the day, they've beaten LSU here during the day. Now today, beating Neil, you just covered it. Kentucky. They beat Florida here. I saw the highlights of that. Got thrown around. A linebacker intercepted Rex Grossman a couple of times. That was a day game. This place is kind of different in the daytime than it is at night. Frankly, it was really electric in here today. You were here for the first half. It was electric down on the field at the end. I mean, this place was rowdy. I think it's just one guy's opinion, and I know the Grove and drinking all day, and I get it. Ole Miss ought to start embracing the day thing a little bit. Frankly, they have more success in the daytime than they do at night.
Well, I guess I was talking to Corey. He called in a second ago, and I was telling him, there's probably something, even if you're one of these, if you're somebody who's mad about the Grove from the standpoint of the game, and I get you got to get up early, you got to get there and all that stuff, and I understand that, but I bet they're having a damn good time right now. And you got back in the Grove at 2:00 after beating a top 10 team, and you're just hanging out watching other teams play the rest of the day, knowing you're waking up tomorrow, like you said, like number 10 in the country or something. I mean, to me, that's even better than getting there at 12 and watching games, waiting all nervous for your game at 6:30. No, I mean, just partying. Look, Ole Miss is winning. That's 13 in a row at home right now. It's 13 in a row. They're 16-3 out of their last 19. I mean, I know it's my shtick, and I told Jeffrey and people watching that have been here the whole time, you're hearing me repeat myself, but Ole Miss has done exactly to every T what they needed to do, was quit being the side joke and quit being one of the players in the Egg Bowl crap and being the team on probation that, quote, uncheated and all the free stuff. Now they're just a team that wins a lot of freaking home games, wins a lot of games in general, puts really good crowds in for big games, and is an SEC program that frankly expects to win every day when they walk out on the field, and they have a dynamic coach when they do it. They've become the most boring SEC team in the best possible way.
I hadn't even thought about it like that, but yeah, you're right.
There's no shtick. Because they're not even plucky anymore. They just win.
No,
I mean, I get they're not
plucky,
Alabama, they're Georgia, but it's not like, oh, look at Cinderella, cute, having a good season. Nah.
No, not at all. I mean, if there's any knock on them right now, it's that their second half offense is struggling. That's it.
And it is.
They're a really good defensive team. They've got players at just about every position. They've got this young freshman tailback who's a freaking stud. They were able to, that in the second half, they were kind of going for a long time. They were not the second half, but the first half, I should say. They were going with two freshman tackles, and Pettis and Williams. They've got this young quarterback who makes plays. Now, he still makes mistakes, and he threw a ball into coverage today that got picked. He threw another couple of balls that could have gotten picked. Yet Lane was pretty complimentary of Jackson's play. He's a charismatic kid. I repeat this for the gazillionth time because I think it's pertinent. He's 19. He's only going to get better. They haven't seen anything resembling the best out of Michael Trigg yet. Lane was upset at Trigg on that illegal procedure on the opening drive where they ended up having to punt.
Yeah.
Cruz came in. They bring Cruz in because they needed a kicker. They kind of go out and sign a kicker basically to a 1-year deal, and he ends up making a really big 53-yard kick. I mean, we didn't think about how big that kick was at the time, but that was a really big kick. Xavier Harris, the freshman, blocks an extra point, turned out to be really big. It impacted kind of the way, Kentucky played a little bit. You got a safety in the end zone where they stopped Levis, and they just did a lot of good things. And you're right, it's not shtick. It's not the Lane Kiffin clipboard thing anymore. They're just good.
It's maybe one of the better program things from a perception standpoint that they're having this season, where they're winning with the run game and defense and physicality and swarming and in belief. I mean, Ole Miss loses that game today if that's a fragile mental team who expects to lose. They don't. They expect to win. They made some plays. They got unlucky and lucky all together there in the last 2 minutes of the game in different ways. And they pulled out one against a really good program in Kentucky that's been very solid and steady under Mark Stoops for a long time.
You just said a key word there. They just beat a team by believing that the team that they beat believed it was going to win. I was watching the Kentucky sideline when the Finley play where Levis fumbled. That Kentucky sideline, no one dropped their head. I watched the offense walk over to the sideline. They got in the huddle and they started working. Okay, here we're going to get it back, and here's what we're going to do. That was a veteran team that has won a bunch of games. Again, Kentucky had won 15 of its last 18 games too now. So I watched them over on that sideline. I was down standing on the Ole Miss sideline at about the 15-yard line, and I was staring right across at them. There was a complete confidence that, hey, we're about to get the ball. We're going to march down the field, and we're going to score. And they did get the ball back, got it back, and got down to the 6-yard line, and everybody on their sideline believed they were going to score. There was a little bit of frustration on the illegal shift. They were kind of pissed off, but it was still totally believed they were going to score. And until Ivy knocked the ball out and Tavius Robinson picked it up, they believed. And I think that's important. You weren't beating Vanderbilt today. You were beating a pretty damn good program that's going to win a bunch of games this year. Make no mistake.
Kentucky played exactly how I thought they would play from the standpoint of, and you'll agree here, if you don't meet their standard, then you lose. And if you play better than them, you win. That's where Kentucky is as a program, is that if you can elevate past exactly what they did today, you will win the game. But by God, you better do it. You've got to get there.
Yeah, they're going to show it. They're going to show up. And they're going to play their game, and they're going to be physical, and they're going to exert their will as much as they possibly can, and they're going to do that deal that they do on defense where they bend a little bit, but they don't break. Ole Miss had 399 yards of offense. That's solid, but no one's going to go, oh boy, Ole Miss lit the scoreboard on fire, because it didn't. They're going to give you what they give you. They're going to take away what they take away, and they're going to be pretty fundamentally sound. Levis holds on to the ball too long. His pocket awareness is lacking. His ball security probably a little shaky. Those are things that he has to work on. But make no mistake, he can beat you, and he has skills. I've seen people go, "Oh, he's overrated." I disagree. After watching him in person today, I disagree. I mean, I'm not taking him with the first pick in the draft. But if you're telling me that guy plays in the NFL, I'm not even remotely surprised. No, you beat a good team today that believed they were going to come in here and win, and they brought a bunch of people down here for this game. This was two of the best programs in the country and conference going against each other today. This was, if you excluding Alabama and Georgia, who are the two best programs in the nation.
Sure.
Ole Miss and Kentucky are right there. I mean, right there. If Ohio State wins today, and they're winning big over Rutgers, I think, Ole Miss and Ohio State have the same record in the last 19 games. That's not completely fair because Ohio State's played, I guess, some conference championships and things of that nature. But still, how many other teams in the country have won 16 of their last 19?
Small list.
I mean, it's Alabama, Georgia, it's Ohio State, it's Ole Miss. Maybe there's somebody else. I don't know. Not many.
I mean, that's about it.
Can't say it. LSU can't say it. Mississippi State can't say it. Texas A&M can't say it.
The
Arkansas
A&M
can't
team
say
that
it.
currently is getting worked by State, it cannot say it.
No, can't say it. I mean, Florida can't say it. Tennessee can't say it. I mean, it's pretty rarefied air. I mean, the next step is that you've got to – but here's where Ole Miss is, kind of put it in perspective. All that's left now for this program It's proven over the years it can win big. It's proven over the years that it can go to access bowls. It's proven everything except it can win the SEC West and win the SEC and compete for national championships. That's what's left. That's where they are. I mean, that's the standard that they're held to. It's not about being cute anymore. It's about, okay, go finish the deal. And there was some talk about that, that they think they're close, and now it's a matter of finishing, and they were talking specifically about, some finishing drives and stuff like that. But I think it applies in a bigger picture sense to where they are as a program. What's left is be consistent and finish. Beat Vanderbilt. Beat Auburn, and when you go down to Baton Rouge, go down there with a different kind of attitude. Don't go down there with that attitude that 2014 team had. Go down there with an attitude of, hey, we're showing up to win because we think we're better than you, and we really don't give a damn about the venue and things like that. And I think over the next 3 weeks, we're going to start kind of pivoting to that game subtly, and it's going to be a really big game depending on what LSU looks like over the next couple of weeks. And not to get way ahead, but you win that one. I told you this last week. I don't think A&M's any good. Tyler and I have thought about this because Tyler kind of thinks A&M's a good team. I don't care where that game's played. I think Ole Miss matches up really, really well with Texas A&M. I don't think A&M can score much on Ole Miss. And so that sets up what that would set up. So that's kind of where they are.
What are you looking ahead to there?
I don't think A&M's good. Now, look, I think Alabama's terrific, and I still think the game in Fayetteville for Ole Miss, I don't care what happens to Arkansas season, the game in Fayetteville for Ole Miss is going to be a hell of an exam. I do. I think that, and I think the Egg Bowl's got a chance to be a real challenge because State's going to do State's thing, but I think this offense for Ole Miss is going to get better each week. I think Jackson's going to play better. They're going to take some shots and try to do some things down the road. He's got a couple of weeks now, I think, to really improve and gain confidence and stuff like that. But they're in a great spot because they wake up tomorrow just in the conversation that we've had a few times, we've had just now, and we're going to have a bunch of times over the next few weeks because they're just going to move up as teams play, and everything's in front of them. It's a total opportunity, and today they beat a really good Kentucky team. The people who are doing this thing of Kentucky they're not. You were here, you saw it.
Mm-hmm.
I was here. You had to go back to get ready. That second half for Kentucky was a hell of an impressive performance. That's what good teams do on the road, and you had to be really resilient to hang on and win that game. And twice, A.J. Finley and then Jared Ivey made plays. That's what you had to do. You've got championship teams make plays, and they did.
Almost halftime in Starkville, 14-0 Mississippi State, and A&M's defense has played incredibly well, but its offense is so bad that it's just in constant bad situations.
Their offense sucks. It's Devin A-Chain, and that's it.
Yeah, it's awful. And
it's
State gets loud and kind of whatever. You give State that type of momentum, that becomes a hellaciously difficult place to play.
Of course it does. It's loud. The bells and all that stuff, it's a loud place.
That's what we're talking about.
When they're good.
Yeah, it's what Texas and Oklahoma are going to see. Good luck. Week after week.
Go ahead. Yeah. We'll talk about this a lot next week. Oklahoma and Texas. But more and more, and you kind of called this, and I was like, I don't know. We'll see. That's starting to look like they made a reach at coaching, and maybe real bad timing on that because this league's a different deal now. Because I'm telling you, Oklahoma sits over there and they look at Ole Miss and Kentucky, for example, since we just watched these two teams play what I thought was a really classic game, and they look at their schedule every year. They'll go, "Oh, Ole Miss, that's a W. At Kentucky, that's a W." I got a news flash. Those are not free W's, champ.
Think Lane Kiffin would be happy with some way to trade for Barry and Brown. That dude is a beast.
He's a stud.
God.
He tripped over a teammate's shoe, or else that kickoff returns a touchdown. Yeah. And then on the play, I don't know who caught him at the 6-yard line, 7-yard. Whoever caught him.
Play of the day.
Kudos to. I think it was Trey Washington, maybe. Someone caught him, and whoever it was unbelievable because when I was down on the field and when he turned, I went, he's gone. And I didn't think anybody would catch him. Someone took the exact right angle and got him. It was on a day full of
Kentucky's
plays.
first touchdown came off the long kick return. I mean, where they got a cheap kind of short field there. Because at that moment, they weren't doing anything offensively.
I mean, memo to future teams playing them: just don't kick it to him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know what you got to do, but don't kick it to him. He's a weapon.
Kind of last thing, I know the snaps were bad. We'll talk about that. Try to figure out what they can do. I mean, it just sort of is what it is right now because it messed up so much timing. But the actual line play was better today. I thought that considering they were all jumbled and had people all over the place, and I mean, I'm sure Pettis got reamed for the false start on that first drive when Lang was going to go for it and had 4th and 1 instead of end up punting on 4th and 6.
They called it on Pettis, but they were pissed at Trigg. Trigg didn't line up correctly.
So he did something wrong.
And so twice on that play they had to whistle over and get him to turn and look. And so instead of getting the play off in 10 or 11 seconds, it was 20-some seconds, and he ended up jumping. But I think they were blaming Trigg more than they blamed Pettis.
Okay. Point being, I thought the offensive line, considering it was all jumbled, nobody was in their right places, I thought they played really well today both ways because while Kentucky does have some offensive line issues, they're pretty good up front on defense.
Yeah, I thought they were pretty good up front. I mean, in general, they opened up some holes. They had the big run with Judkins.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. But
Judkins had a big – and by the way, Malik Heath had a big block on that play. Yeah, they were good. I mean, look, it was two really good teams that played a 3-point game down to inside the final minute with the game undecided. That's what it was. It was two really good teams played a really good game.
We played with Jackson Dart, and he must have had some baseball because the way he was sliding. I think it played out more today because he fielded all those ground balls and all those bad snaps, and it gets in your head a number of different ways. It's A, you have to pick up the snap. B, you have to make sure your eyes stay down the field. C, you're actually thinking about it before the snap comes because you know it might be all over the place. That he kept the offense on schedule in a situation where somebody with a little less composure, frankly, him maybe weeks ago, they would have bogged down with those snaps issues. You would have seen teams and quarterbacks that just went completely incompetent because of what was going on, just getting the play and getting the ball off.
Yeah, I failed to ask this. I meant to. I'll try to remember to ask on Monday. I thought it really disrupted the timing of the offense as well.
Mm-hmm.
There was a play that Kentucky made early in the third quarter on their touchdown drive to tie the game, where they ran a jet sweep, and the timing on it was just absolutely perfect. Like to the point where you're like, I don't know how Levis got the ball out of his hands.
That's right.
And Ole Miss, those kind of plays were not available to Ole Miss because of the timing with snaps and stuff. And I mean, look, if you're looking for something to nitpick, and I don't think it's even nitpicking. I mean, if you're looking for something to worry about, it's what happens if something happens to Caleb Warren. I mean, I joked about it in the press box. I mean, who would have ever guessed that the MVP of this team would be Caleb Warren? But he's awfully important. I mean, he's as important as anybody on the team.
Yeah, Eli Acker's in his first year as a full-time starter, and he's having to change positions into one he doesn't play. I mean, it just is what it is. So
yeah, Eli's a really good guard right now, and I don't mean this as a criticism. And he's trying hard, but he's ineffective as a center in terms of snapping the football right now, and almost to the point where if Acker's going to be in the game, you've got to get under center some.
Mm-hmm. And they did. I guess the second play of the game, I thought it actually would have made sense just as an offensive philosophy, the way everything was going, because it would have, as you said, it would have helped the timing for sure. Last thing, just Vanderbilt.
Not what they've worked on. Yeah.
Well, right. Vanderbilt on Saturday. What's your line guess? I asked Jeffrey. Curious what you think.
Oh, let's see. Ole Miss minus 23.5.
Jeffrey guessed 21. So yeah, somewhere in that. And that's right. I don't think Ole Miss is ever going to be in danger of losing the game.
What's your guess on the line?
Yeah, I don't know, 19-21, somewhere in there.
Okay. So you think I'm a little high?
I don't know. I mean,
okay.
Ole Miss just isn't scoring a lot of points.
I am the one that let us, we have a new advertiser, so maybe I am a little high. I mean, maybe that's what it is.
Look at you.
I couldn't be more sober.
You and I both got the Ole Miss win and Kentucky cover, right?
I said Ole Miss by 3 or 4 all week. I miss a bunch. I'm giving myself credit when I get one right. I did not see a blowout in this game. Remember, you and I talked about this. We would finish a show and we're like, are we crazy? Because all these people are talking about a blowout. I didn't see a scenario where either one of these teams blew the other out today. I just didn't.
Yeah, I picked Ole Miss 23-20. So
I had 21. I had 21-17.
Okay. Oklahoma State is beating the hell out of Baylor, by the way.
I had that one. Oklahoma State's really good. They're they're a sneaky title contender.
And Wake is popping Florida State.
Oh, yeah? How about that? I'm going to get that one, too.
Yeah, there you go. So,
hey, I got my money line. Illinois beat Wisconsin. I mean, I'm having a day.
Okay, there you go. Tyler is not having a day. I don't think the Razorbacks are going to get tied. So
I know. I had Alabama covering.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, hey, don't count me out, man.
Yeah. What's the column? I know you're about to go right.
Yeah, I'm about to go right. The column is going to be, and when you read at the beginning of it, you'll go see that's why you have to go to games. On the sideline as the game was ending, Kelvin Bolden was yelling up into the stands, and he was yelling, "Stay home, stay home." And at first I was like, "What? Who are you talking about?" And then I looked, kind of in the air. He was yelling into the recruiting section, and he was yelling at Dante Dowdell. And so that's the lead to my column, is kind of what a day it was for them as a program, and where you go from here and stuff like that. Yeah, it's why you go. People say, why do you go to the games? You can cover it from TV, and you can. But sometimes you can't get the little things.
Mm-hmm. All right, we're going to knock that out. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, Jay, see you.
Right, bye. Neil McCready, thanks for his time. I've still got some work to do here as he's trying to get out of the press box. Yeah, again, you can't really write ahead in a game like that. It sort of is what it is. Number still on the screen, 662-259-7556. I'm actually going to write that down because I'm going to go to stats for a minute and nobody calls. We'll go over those. We'll look at those, but I need a pen that I may not have in front of me, actually, which is, here we go. Sorry, never mind. Because I don't think I have the hotline number on the next screen. I don't not have that programmed. 662-259-7556 if you'd like to call. Again, thanks Neil for his time. Let's see. Yeah, I got the stats page up. Jackson Dart, 15 of 29, 213. He threw one pick. No touchdowns today. But I thought Jackson was pretty good. I mean, I know that he got lucky on a couple balls across the middle. Could have had another extra turnover or two, but he played pretty well. He's played tough. He's been smart as far as run, pass, getting down, a lot of those kind of things. He's been really good from that standpoint, I thought. And he does. He's more comfortable by the day. He's getting better. Jackson's growing. I mean, he's still in his first full year as a starting quarterback. I know he started some games from SC last year, but this is the first time it's just been his team outside of the Central Arkansas game where it's just go and be the starter and be the leader and have a team with, really lofty expectations on your shoulders. I mean, that's a difference too. I mean, SC was not going to go win the national title last year. They were not going to be 7-0 doing whatever that's possibility for Ole Miss here in Baton Rouge. I mean, it's a different mindset for Jackson Dart, and I think he's coming into that pretty well. It's, we're grading him on somewhat of a curve that is deserved and just the way it is. He's got to go win games. I mean, you don't get a curve when it comes to the scoreboard, but I'm seeing growth. I'm seeing maturation out of Dart for sure. There's no doubt about that. Who's on the line?
Hey, this is Tom all the way up in Maryland.
Hey, Tom, what's up?
Hey, I got a quick question for you, just a hypothetical. Thought it was interesting.
Sure.
If you could pick any previous Ole Miss player from, recent history probably to playing on this Ole Miss offense, I'd say defense, but they seem to be doing pretty okay. Who do you think you pick and why? I've got 3 options, and I'll hang up and hear you talk about yours. I'm thinking either one, whoever the best center is in recent history, most reliable center. 2, you can't go wrong with like a Laramie Tunzel type to solidify offensive line with, freshmen on the ends. But 3, who I think I might pick would probably be like Mike Wallace to really, have an over-the-top threat to just really give that option that doesn't seem to be there right now. But anyway, that's my thoughts. I'll hang up.
Okay, appreciate it. That's a really good question because you can go in any of 3 of those things. And my first thought was absolutely add a wide receiver to this team. That just made the most sense to me. But the more you think about it, you get better in so many areas from offensive line play, a center. And I mean, Mitchell makes a good point. You just go grab Matt Corral, who's seasoned at the end, and just have a dynamic quarterback and let him hope he can throw some receivers open. And basically, you have some semblance of last year's team. I think it has to be a wide receiver. I mean, if I have a chance to grab an elite left tackle, then that changes a lot of stuff. But this team needs an over-the-top presence. There's just no doubt about that. That's what it needs. I mean, what do you guys think? What's the answer in the string? There's a lot of you guys still on. Who would you add to this team, say, over the last 15 years, if you could add somebody? Wide receivers, you could have Mike Wallace. You could have Dex. You could have AJ, DK, Laquan, Dante, Tunzel, Corral, Chad Kelly. A lot of dudes. Mingo was getting bracketed today. That's why he was not getting, DK Metcalf, obviously. Yeah, Mingo was not getting looks because he was being, their plan was to take him away. It opened up a lot of things for Heath, even beyond the catches he did get. I think he had 9 targets, but only 6 catches, but he went over the 100-yard mark. So it was a good day for Malik. But they were trying to make sure that Mingo did not beat them. That was the goal here. Will Levis, 18 of 24, 220 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was fine. He was fine. That's what he was. I mean, he was okay. He was good. He was efficient. He didn't make any critical mistakes. Levis to me does not look comfortable in the pocket. If I have my main criticism of him is that he just seems to get some happy feet. He does some different things with pressure. The way he kind of throws the ball when he's under duress. We knew that was a possibility, and I thought that was potentially the case. I just thought, Ole Miss blitzed him early. They sold out. They brought 1 or 2 more than you're used to seeing with Ole Miss in those situations, and it worked. I mean, it really did. It worked well to get at Levis there at that point. Memphis has Evan Ingram. Obviously, would give him a tight end, add something there from that standpoint. For Kentucky, Rodriguez, 19 carries, 72 yards, a touchdown. Yeah, only averaged 3.8, but I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's how Ole Miss, I thought, played defensively, is that Rodriguez gets so many trash yards, and if he still only averaged 3.8, that meant he's getting hit at least inside 2 yards every time, and maybe even less than that. I mean, that's a lot of contact around the line of scrimmage. I thought Ole Miss's front 7 defensively did a nice job from that standpoint. Nobody really hurt Ole Miss from a receiving standpoint for Kentucky. They had 1 person with 4 catches. Couple with Rodriguez actually had 3 catches in the passing game, but yeah, nothing there. And then for Ole Miss, again, Quinshon Judkins goes 15 for 106. He averaged 7.1 per carry, had a long of 48. That was a huge hole, and then his burst there for that touchdown early in the first quarter on that one, the 1 score. So again, he's gone over 100 yards 3 of his 5 games. As a Rebel, he had 98 against Georgia Tech. So 4 of the 5 games, at least 98 yards for Judkins. And it's not like he's getting tons of touches. I mean, he had 27 a week ago against Tulsa, but that's the only time he's had the really heavy load from that standpoint. Dart carries the ball 8 times for 40 yards. He had a long of 12. He averaged 5 there on that. Zach Evans finishes with 9 carries for 24 yards. He only averages 2.7 yards per carry. I thought he was pretty good early. And then we didn't see him much, but I just did not think that maybe he had his normal burst. I know that before the game, Chris Lowe had reported that he had his best week of practice. I mean, I would assume that came from Lane, but I have I have no clue. Sorry for the ambient noise, G. I apologize for that, even though not my fault. So sorry for that. Ole Miss from a receiving standpoint, yeah, Malik Heath, 6 catches, 100 yards, 9 targets for him. He gets almost twice as many targets as the next guy. Michael Trigg gets targeted 5 times. He turns that into 3 catches for 41 yards. Watkins, 2 catches, 49 yards. Judkins, 1 for 14. Mingo, 1 for 3. Just Mingo was actually targeted 6 times, but only got only one catch in that. That's interesting. Then Zach Evans, 1 catch, 3 yards, and Casey Kelly, 1 catch for 3 yards as well. Again, 213 receiving passing yards for the Rebels. So that is kind of a quick stats look there. Again, Ole Miss defensively kept Kentucky under 300 yards of total offense until that final series. So they played really well from that standpoint. Kentucky kept the ball for almost 37 minutes. I haven't looked at total plays. I could do that, but it's going to take a lot of moving around. But 37 minutes of total offense, and then under 300 yards until that final series. So again, 662-259-7556. Any final calls? We're right at 2 hours, something like that, as usual. Again, Ole Miss getting a huge win over Kentucky, 22-19, the score for that one. Setting up Vanderbilt next week, and then Auburn, and then LSU. I mean, really and truly, it's a great opportunity for Ole Miss. And you look down that schedule, and not to get overly carried away, but LSU's not terrific. It's a winnable game. You get A&M, you get Alabama. That Alabama home game still just kind of sitting there, even though there's a lot of work to do before that. I mean, you don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole on that one, but 662-259-7556 is the number. Call. Got anything we haven't talked about? I've talked about a lot. Just a great day for Ole Miss. I mean, they maximized that and did as well of a job as they could have done. I thought it was a really, really good effort for Ole Miss today, from a perception standpoint, from the standpoint of getting the crowd in. It gets all the attendance stuff out of the way. You know, I mean, again, it was self-inflicted. Lane's the one that's talked about it multiple weeks in a row, but he credits the crowd. Even in the, I thought it was an interesting line. He gets asked on TV right when the game's over about that he had challenged the crowd, and he said, yeah, the crowd showed up, and it was better than our 4-minute offense. He, a little bit of self-deprecation there. I thought that was smart. Thought it was good. And this definitely just removes it. I mean, it shows that you play the big game, you play the SEC game, it's going to be all right. People are going to show up. There's no doubt about that. Yeah, Grove closes at 6:30 is what I was told. So that's longer than usual. It's usually 3 hours after the end of the game, which would have been 2:15, 5:15, or whatever. So a little more than an hour than usual with the Grove on this one. So yeah, something like that. Yeah, Ole Miss is out of kicker. I mean, Cruz had a good day. He hits the 26-yarder that was the game winner in a way. That's the winning margin. And then the 53-yarder earlier that I don't know that it had much more than 53. I mean, he had to really pop those 256 he made, but he's been accurate. He's been a heck of a find for sure. Yeah, that's 2 hours from now in the Grove, and that's what I heard. I heard it was pretty packed still. I think people went back and turned the TVs on and just kind of hanging out. There's no reason to get in a hurry to get out of there for this one. All right, last call, 662-259-7556 is the number. If you have something, call, chat. We've got Alabama still boat racing Arkansas, Mississippi State controlling Texas A&M. That's 14-0 at the half there. And then tonight, LSU and Auburn is your night game. LSU then 11 o'clock next week. We talked about that. That's why I just think Ole Miss LSU is 2:30. I guess it's possible it's a night game. That you can never rule that out when it's LSU playing at Tiger Stadium that ESPN gives them a night game. But it's Alabama or Mississippi State, Mississippi State, or Ole Miss LSU for that 2:30. I mean, I guess it's possible the State wins and they're on a little bit of a roll that you could have that, but it feels Ole Miss LSU 2:30 or 6:30. And 11 o'clock would surprise me, especially when it be LSU getting 2 11 o'clocks in a 3-week period or whatever that is. So I just don't see that happening. That would really shock me. Who's on the line?
Hey, Chase, it's Jarrett.
Hey, Jared, what's up?
Not much, man. So, forgive me if y'all haven't talked about any of this already, but so number one, biggest program win since 15 Alabama, maybe?
Ooh. That's a decent question. I think there's a possibility for that. I mean, if you look at it strictly from the standpoint of what does this set up potentially. Now, here's the problem: is I think for that to be the case, I think you have to give them the 7-0. Yeah, they have to get to 7-0 for that to be the case. I mean, just in a bubble, this isn't a bigger win in some ways than A&M. But
yeah, you mean last year? A&M last year?
Yeah. Sorry, the win over A&M last year. You had game day. It was the great atmosphere. It sets you up to get back to the Sugar Bowl later as long as you beat State. It's kind of in there.
Right. But it could. I mean, if let's just. I mean, we're playing a lot of what ifs here, but like, let's say, Ole Miss goes 9-0 to play Bama and then wins that game. Then, I mean, it's huge, right?
Oh, well, sure. Yeah, I mean, it's every game until then was the huge game to get to that point. I mean, if we're just going to do the ultimate goal,
but I mean, Ole Miss,
that is the ultimate goal, is to get to 9-0 when Alabama comes to town.
Right. The Ole Miss should probably be a favorite in the rest of the games until then, except for maybe A&M. I mean, I left my buddy's house and they were losing 14-0 to State at halftime. I don't know if that's
still
changed.
holding. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know, man. I mean, it's awesome. It's great. Like, it's great that we're nitpicking that kind of stuff. And then speaking of nitpicking, so I think the answer to your question about the player earlier is the center. And I think that kind of dovetails into what you were talking about with Dart. I feel like there were a lot of plays, especially in the second half, where, like, he didn't really get to make much of a read because the snap was bad. And, like, by the time he had the snap, he was just like, oh, crap, I got to get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Does it seem that way to you? Or
No, it completely messed up timing. It messed up timing in multiple ways. Ole Miss works off a lot of motion, which means the snap needs to happen at certain parts of the motion. That's a key tenet of Lane's offenses. And then, two, when you don't know where the snap is, or you have to go find it, your eyes don't stay down the field the same way. Both physically, because they don't stay down the field, and then mentally, because you're not just focused on what's down the field. You're also thinking about where's the snap going to be, and I've got to corral that and figure it out. So it plays into it in 3 or 4 different ways, frankly.
Yeah. So I mean, because that about got him beat. It was, you know what I mean? Like, I think if that wasn't an issue, it's probably a 2-score game. Probably.
Ole Miss would have scored more points, in my opinion, yes, without those issues. I mean, frankly, it was, if there's a path, because the yardage totals were pretty different. It was going to be a close game. Ole Miss could have lost the game. I'm not saying Ole Miss should have blown Kentucky out. I'm saying there was a recipe for that if the snaps are better and Berrien Brown gets it all corralled, or you just kick it away from him. Because Berrien Brown kept Kentucky in the game to give them a chance later. His early play made everything even a possibility.
Yeah. And does it concern you a little bit that this 2 weeks in a row, I mean, I know last week is Tulsa and whatever, but that they've scored 3 points in total in the 2 second halves the last 2 games?
It's a concern because it is the one thing that is most noticeable when looking at the stats. I'm going to give them a little more of a break last week because they were up 35-17. It got sleepy, and you're looking ahead. And that game was a little strange, but they still didn't go down and get the points to put it away. You know what I mean? They were up 8 against Tulsa, got the ball twice, and didn't go slam the door.
Yeah, so that's what I was kind of thinking. So, like, last week, it's easy to say what you just said, right? But then it happens again this week, and you're like, okay, well, is that a bit of a trend? Once is something, 2 times is a coincidence, 3 times is a trend.
Sure.
Right? So we'll see. So I have to talk about Air Force just a tiny little bit. But so tell me if this comparison isn't a little bit weird. So 14 Bama game, okay? Air Force and Ole Miss also kicked off at the same time against Navy, who Air Force played today. And that day, I had two TVs set up, watching both games at the same time, which was the same case with today.
Okay.
That game, Air Force converts a first down to be able to ice the game to get the win against Navy. And as soon as that happens, Bama starts their final drive, which ends up in an Ole Miss turnover. Today, same thing. Air Force gets a first down, ices the game against Navy. Immediately thereafter, Kentucky starts their final drive, iced by an Ole Miss turnover. So clearly it was fate. I don't have anything else to say.
Figure out who Air Force plays, and when they play Navy next year, figure out who Ole Miss plays, and we'll put some money on it and see how it goes.
That's right, man. All right, buddy. Keep up the good work, and have a good day.
All right. Appreciate it, Jerry. I don't know, Memphis. He's asking if repetition can fix some of those issues. That's a great question, but I don't know. It's not like they have not. I mean, there is a game experience component to it where these reps in games are completely different. And yeah, you do anything, you're going to get better at it. Because it's mental in a way too. You're having to make sure the snap gets there, which means you're having to think about it because it's not just second nature as opposed to doing it your entire life, and that's the only position you played. And then you're also having to block a really big nose tackle in front of you. I mean, because Kentucky was also playing in a lot of odd front. They were putting people head up on the center. I mean, you had somebody right there. It wasn't like you were facing an Ole Miss type defense where you're doing some double teams or you're backside blocking or some different things. I mean, it was no, here is the guy I'm blocking right here, and as soon as I snap this ball, he is on me, and I have to fire out, but also have to get the ball there. There's a lot to that. So I do think repetition probably could help from that standpoint. There's no doubt about that. That would have to be able to be something that could improve to some level, but you're just having to improve in the middle of the fire here. I mean, we're going into this next game is going to be October the 8th when Ole Miss plays Vanderbilt here in 7 days in Nashville for that one. So, okay, again, last call, 662-259-7556. If anybody's got anything else, last couple minutes or so for this. Ole Miss 22, Kentucky 19. Rebels 5-0. 5-0. They have aced this part of the schedule. Then you get to Vanderbilt and start looking past that. Auburn has the AAU on the helmet, but they have been bad this season. Auburn obviously should have lost to Missouri. We spent plenty of mileage on that over the course of last week, and then they did get popped by Penn State. So losses coming for Auburn. They've got plenty of internal issues, Harsin and everything else. So a very winnable game back in 2 weeks in Oxford for that. I don't expect an 11 o'clock for that one, and obviously Ole Miss will be ready and a large crowd for that game. So. Appreciate Jeffrey. Appreciate Neil. We had Brian on standby, but he was doing some things, hanging out, and I wanted to make sure I got to your calls. And then we kind of kept everybody a little longer than I expected. So we were not trying to run him off, not trying to talk to Brian. It was just kind of the way the day went off. We will obviously get back to him next week, and maybe in some podcasts this week as well, as we try to bring you as many as possible for that. Thanks for about the stream. We had huge crowds in there today. Obviously, when Ole Miss wins, that's great for our business, great for YouTube, great for all this as well. So I really enjoyed it. I'm sorry for some of the early kinks that we had in the system. I didn't have everything set up, but we got it going. Had a lot of fun with you guys. So appreciate it. We'll be right back here for Ole Miss and Vanderbilt, or we'll have a post-game show somehow for Ole Miss and Vanderbilt next week. So I hope you have a wonderful day. Stay safe in the Grove or wherever you are, and we'll talk to you again on Monday.